Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. Tonight's guest was elected to the 77th Assembly District in the Bronx in a special election last February, and in November he was elected to his first full term as a Bronx Assembly member, representing the Bronx neighborhoods of Claremont, Concourse, Highbridge, Mount Eden, and Morris Heights. Tonight we'll talk with him about congestion pricing, the City of Yes, state legislation that he's authored to protect homeowners, funding for schools, how the Trump presidency might affect his constituents, and whatever else we can come up with. So please join me welcoming the Assembly member from the 77th AD, the Honorable Landon Dais. Nice to have you with us, sir.
Gary, thank you for having me.
Congratulations on being elected to your first term. You know, I was thinking about it. It's not even a year that you're in the Assembly. We'll come up to that next month. Before we get to some of the issues, how's it been? Was this what you anticipated? Mm-hmm. Is it more frustrating because you want to save the world and it's like Albany? What's your impression now, almost a year later, and of course having to go through really 2 elections within a year?
3 elections.
3.
Because remember, I had the primary on June 25th.
Oh, that's right.
And
of course.
Technically 4 if you count the county committee. So if you go back a year ago, I had no expectation, I had no intention of running for office.
Really?
We were dealing with the death of my father-in-law,
Oh,
Tony, who was just a tremendous man and was dealing with that. I actually was just recovering from major knee surgery. So I was just focused on family and dealing with the homestead.
With your life.
Right, life. And just like so many people in the Bronx, life can come at you in threes, right, and bad things. And then suddenly I got a phone call saying, hey, we want, LaToya's resigning, and as a member of the party, I was like, oh, let me know how I can help.
Right.
And then,
by the way, LaToya Joyner was the Assembly member in that district.
My predecessor, she did an amazing job. And then now, being elected, because I had no intention of it, I think maybe that gives me a plus, because some people always want to be elected, right? And in my case, I just want to do what's best for my community. I was doing community cleanups, working on trying to, coaching baseball, youth baseball. So all I was trying to do was make a difference in my local area. And then somehow that translated into, hey, we think he might be the right candidate, because they knew there was going to be a challenge from Congressman Espaillat, because likely he wanted to control the seat. And they made the right decision. I won by 19 points, despite the congressman putting a lot of support, a lot of people on the ground against me. And I think that demonstrated that if you put hard work for the people, if you work to the people, you can win. And
have you enjoyed your time? Is it, again, frustrating because you say, gee, can't we get this done? That kind of thing.
What I've learned, it's a very complicated system. Even as an attorney, someone who has experience of doing lobbying, there's a large body of people, right, that you have to try to get together and to come together on issues. But one thing I did learn is that Speaker Hasty is a tremendous leader, and his ability to get all these different personalities from different walks of New York to get on board with an agenda to move New York forward really taught me what it takes to be a leader in this space.
That could be very instructive for especially someone who's a veteran. Obviously, he's been on our program numerous times. Somebody who's been through all that, and you say, wow, look at how he's getting people together, and then you, of course, create your own space. We talked about this on the phone prior to the program. What's your vision for the Bronx? When you look at your district, of course,
right,
but the whole Bronx, I know you see something, and I'd love for you to share that with our viewers and your constituents.
I mean, I think people got to remember that the Bronx is beautiful.
You're preaching to the choir.
I know. You're a true Bronx boy, right? Yeah. The Bronx has so much potential, but with that potential, we can't forget about those who are here, those who made the Bronx what it is, those who fought through the bad years of the Bronx to make it what it is today. We can't forget them. They need to be seen, they need to be heard, and they need to be fought for, right? What I do see is the Bronx could be the new economic center for New York City. I think we have the most potential because we have so much that has not been developed, has not been invested in the Bronx. We have to get people to really believe and see the vision that the people who live here see. And we need to change the perception. That's why I know people laughed at me when I did my block cleanups, but I believe a cleaner Bronx equals a safer Bronx, right? Showing the beauty of the Bronx, showing who the people are will change the perception, and we can get that done.
And getting people to participate in that process to say, well, wait a minute, you and you and you can make a difference.
And real quick, a quick example of that, the mayor had a town hall in the Bronx. These 12 amazing young women from PS 229 by River Park Towers challenged the mayor about healthy foods. About we have food that is rotting in our grocery stores. Why can't my community get that? My office, working with their principal and those 12 young ladies, we got a black-owned farmers market to their district, fresh food, fresh produce. And that gave those young ladies the hope to see that they can be the change, that they are the leaders. At this ripe age of 12 and 13, they challenged the highest elected official in the city and got something done.
You know, you talk about farmers markets. I've actually been talking with some people who do run farmers markets. We're going to do a show on that at some point, maybe in the early spring or something. But I've always believed that there are two universals in the Bronx, that every single neighborhood wants a farmers market.
Agreed.
Every single neighborhood wants it. And the other thing is they all want their kids to learn music and they want to develop the music. To me, that's Gary's editorial opinion tonight. You stressed to me the whole idea of improving business districts,
yes,
and developing even restaurants. You know, I still see some vacancies in places. I'm like, wow, people would want to be here. Well, what goes into not trying to do it, but getting it to a point where these are good economic engines for the local community?
Well, we've seen two things, right? One, we've seen a bunch of Rite Aids close, right? These huge locations, right? And that becomes a blight. So, for example, we have the Ogden Market, right? They own a supermarket. They're trying to transform a former Rite Aid into like a food hall. It's going to be a market, a butcher, and a food hall, but it's being slowed up because Con Edison hasn't turned on some of the utilities.
Oh, goodness.
Right. So
that seems so simple.
It does seem so simple, but if you talk to the small business owners in the Bronx, they are running into these issues. If it's not Con Edison, it's DOB. If it's not DOB, it's another licensing, issue, right? We need to streamline our business services and cut the red tape for our small businesses. Our small businesses in the Bronx can't afford a delay, and we need to make sure that we give them all the opportunities to open because we need those jobs.
Are you in a position in the Assembly to affect that? I realize you can't change the world, but then, of course, you're there. Con Ed, of course, would presumably listen to an Assembly member?
Well, yes and no. So I am on the Small Business Committee and the Economic Development Committee, and as of today, I have been also put onto the Energy Committee, which would have, some say obviously with Con Edison. But I think the biggest thing is having an advocate for those business owners. Someone who sees them, hears them, is going to fight for them. And the small businesses in my district get that every day with me.
And hear what they have to say,
Absolutely.
What these problems which don't get reported in the New York Times, et cetera, et cetera. My sense with the Bronx Economic Development Corporation is that they hear the same things that you hear.
Well, the Bronx, the Bronx EDC is ran by a fellow Fordham Prep brother, and so obviously we believe Rob Walsh. We both believe in the Bronx. And one thing we both stressed, we need to diversify the type of businesses that are in the Bronx. So there's a new company called Jules. It's an EV rental company, and they just bought 1,300 Fisker cars. Fisker went out of business, so they acquired.
What are Fisker cars?
It's electric vehicles.
Electric vehicles.
So they just bought 1,300 vehicles. They're going to be parked in the Bronx, and it's like a rental company, like Hertz, but it's just electric cars. But now we have all these electric cars. We need chargers. The Bronx EOC, right there near Monroe College off of Jerome, is opening an economic development center, and they're going to have an EV training center where we're going to be training people from the community to maintain and build EV chargers. This is how we make change in the Bronx. If we're going to create opportunities, we got to make sure there are jobs and training available for those, because education plus opportunity equals a career.
What was the number you quoted? 1,300?
1,300 cars.
And of course, look at the numbers of cars we have. This, to me, is instructive for all of us about what it takes to make change. Boy, you'd love to just, make change.
Right.
But if you start here, you educate people, train people, then all of a sudden they get the idea, they understand why it affects our environment and everything else. On that note, let's just talk about congestion pricing, which just started. Do you see this as ultimately being, it's a little early to judge everything, but do you see it as a successful thing, and are your constituents happy about it or complaining?
I think out the gate, my constituents, the Bronx in general, are complaining, right? Because they are traveling to Manhattan, so the cost is going to be they're going to have to pay. They're going to deal with the cost. I'm a baseball coach in my community, and a lot of the fathers, I represent a large Latino community, and in my baseball league, a lot of them are Uber drivers, right? And so they were complaining. They were complaining about it. However, it came out, I think, in the New York Times. They saw that Uber and Lyft and those companies actually were lobbying for it, because if you notice, they have a lesser fee, which is also just passed on to the passenger. Right. So I think, on their end, they're seeing if it actually works and lessens traffic to a degree, that it actually might be a boon for them. So I think education and communication,
because they'll be able to move quicker, et cetera,
yes.
et cetera. And of course, for all of us, some of the causes we passed along. But the key for me is, okay, so you take people out of their cars, and people who in the South Bronx, frankly, can largely, I mean, I'm not making any overall judgment, but in most cases, they probably could take a subway to go downtown.
Yes.
But they don't want to take the subway because they don't feel safe, because there aren't enough trains, because it's too, it's too crowded, we know. Will that money, I think ultimately the goal was $15 billion. Will that money get to the MTA so that they will do the things they need to do, put up those barriers so people don't get pushed on the train, keep everybody safer, as well as more trains? Are you confident that that will happen, or that's what your job is to figure out?
So I think you're asking the $15 billion question. And it's not just me asking it, it's what the citizens of New York are asking. And that starts at the top, right? It starts at the governor, it starts at the mayor. So one, if we want people to believe in congestion pricing, we need to also show that we are also trying to reform the MTA. It is time that we open up the books, we reform the MTA to make sure that we are getting our costs down and we are getting our money's worth. Right now, to build subway track, we are spending 8 times the amount of money that other municipalities are spending to do the similar work.
Wow.
So we need to really ask the question, are you doing the job? Because it's great that we're getting the extra capital, which is needed. We need to have clean and safe subways. I want more ferries. We don't have a ferry on the East River. Having ferries on the west side of the Bronx would give people a different option beyond the subway. Soundview has it. The east side of the Bronx has it. Why doesn't the west side of the Bronx have it?
And I got to tell you, I've ridden those ferries. They're really delightful. On a cold day, maybe not.
Maybe not today.
You can go underneath, but on a beautiful day, it's a tremendous ride, and in 25 minutes or a half hour, you're right down there at South Street.
So if we want to give people, if we really want to give people not taking cars outside of congestion pricing, we need to give alternatives of modes of transportation that are safe, clean, and efficient for our community.
You were very proud of the fact that you passed 2 bills, 2
yes.
Pieces of legislation for a freshman legislator, who had to deal with 4 elections. That's pretty significant. Let's talk about both of them. The Family Court Judges Bill.
Yes.
Why was that important to you to get passed? What was it, and what does it do for the people of the Bronx? Sure.
So my office is at 910 Grand Concourse, right on 162nd and Grand Concourse.
Everybody knows where that is.
I'm a block away from the family court. I have friends that are judges there, and Senator Bailey, who's the chairman of the Bronx Democratic Party, former chair of COAS, now chair of insurance, as of breaking news today.
Oh, really?
Yes. We were talking, and we didn't realize what the backlog of cases were in the family court. Over 2,000 cases in the Bronx.
2,000?
2,000 cases.
So if you're case number 1,242, you're looking at months.
Exactly. Because the reality is we need more judges across the board, right? But we realize you're talking about some of the most sensitive families, juveniles, some real delicate issues. So the Bronx alone got 3 more judges. The state of New York got 28. So right now we are trying to make the family court system more efficient so that now we have quality judges. We have 3 amazing judges who are coming in on the Bronx who will sit in the bench today. And that's going to make the difference for our families and the children in the Bronx.
It simply was to facilitate the system so it can actually work. Gee, I hadn't asked you about this beforehand, but could we do something like that in housing court?
Listen,
I mean,
housing court
stands out to
needs
me
to
over
be
years.
it needs to be just completely changed. We got to make it more humane. It needs to be fairness also on both sides, right? There's some really good tenants, and there's good landlords also that deserve their rightful day in court also, right? But the bad landlords, who we know are doing bad stuff, and those tenants who are trying to game the system, we got to make sure that we bring more judges and we can actually adjudicate those cases in a more efficient, more humane manner.
Then the other bill, and I really didn't know about this until you and your staff educated me about it, is this deed theft bill.
Yes.
I had never been involved in this kind of process. I had no idea this was going on. Tell us all about it, and then people who hadn't heard about it, your jaw is going to drop. It just seems crazy to me.
So, this again, I have to give credit to Speaker Hasty. It's rare that a rookie assembly member would get a bill like this. This was what you call a programmatic bill, which means it started from the AG's office, from Attorney General Tish James' office. But because my background as an attorney, my background in real estate, I guess he felt comfortable allowing me to take the helm of this bill. So basically, throughout New York, if there was a situation where someone was saying my deed was stolen, under court law, it was basically it was a civil issue. It was a commercial issue, not a criminal issue.
Why would somebody steal and it's actually stealing the deed, the piece of...
So basically what was happening in the worst case scenarios, you have these con artists, specifically targeting seniors, especially immigrant seniors who might have been owning a home for 60, 70 years, right? Let's think about in gentrifying areas of Brooklyn, parts of the North Bronx, the Riverdale area, Southeast Queens. That property they might have bought in the 60s for $30,000, it's now worth $600,000.
Sure.
Right? And then they would falsify deeds, utilize that to get a loan on the property. So, because that property that is probably paid off, it doesn't have a mortgage, they would get a mortgage on that property, and the owner would never know that a mortgage was taken on their property.
Wow, and this was something that would, to me, if it happened once, it would be incredible.
It was happening hundreds, if not close to 1,000 times.
Just incredible.
And when Tish James brought us a heat map, and it was like these red dots, the Southeast Queens and Brooklyn was number 1 and 2. The Northeast Bronx was number 3.
Wow.
And that caught the attention of the speaker, that caught the attention of myself, Chairman Bailey, and we realized I'm a homeowner in the Bronx. I wanted to make sure that we protect, because think about it, we might not have a lot in the Bronx sometimes, but there are people put their entire nest egg in that,
So
and it was being stolen.
just to move it ahead, so
Sorry.
you tightened up the process?
Yes.
So that there would be no loopholes and these kinds of things, or make sure that anything that was applied for was fully investigated.
So it's now
etc.
codified, so now the district attorney can now file criminal charges if it arises to that point. And I believe DA Darcel Clark actually has already had an indictment, that first indictment in the Bronx.
Well, congratulations. I'm just curious to connect the dots with our first part of the conversation. You look like you feel pretty comfortable doing this work, even though it's not the kind of thing you thought you would be doing.
Like I said, a year ago, I was just being a baseball coach, a dad, and running a small business, and as an attorney. And I feel comfortable, not because of what I'm doing, but because I think I'm doing what's right.
Because you're getting, in the case of the legislation, the other thing that you got right, you secured $2.1 million for 10 community schools in District 9.
Yes.
Congratulations. Just to let people know, and this went for STEM, we could talk about all the great things it goes for that we desperately need. What's that process like of getting that money? I mean, you got to knock on doors and say, how does that get allocated?
So
I think that's instructive for people to know who say, hey, we want
Yes.
funding for whatever we've got.
So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good,
That's okay.
right? So I was already working on this. The governor made some remarks that I think she misspoke and was unfortunate. And I think in a manner to demonstrate that she had a commitment to the kids of the Bronx, she matched me $1 million to help with my STEM program idea.
So you brought it up at a time when you felt, or then it turned out, that she really wanted to prove herself on the education end.
Correct. She made a mistake on
appreciate your
something,
candor.
and she was like, "Listen, we need to do something more for the kids in the Bronx. How can I help?" The speaker, we get capital money. This was mostly capital, and some programmatic funding. The speaker gave me some extra money. The governor matched me on that end, and we were able to give $2.1 million. Actually, it's a little bit more now. We actually gave an additional $300,000. So now we're talking about 12 schools, not 10.
Wow, that's wonderful.
And 10 of the schools are getting $200,000 grants, including Taft High School, or the Taft High School campus. And District 9 Superintendent Harry Sherman was so taken back by it because this was one of the largest
Think of
commitments.
how many, we're buying computers and technology and instruction.
So we're
and
buying
things
technology. We're
like
not doing computers. All these schools have computers. We're doing real STEM lab, right? Working with
STEM labs.
So these are STEM labs because the reality is, let's think about the future. Artificial intelligence, engineering, science, math. We need to make sure our kids have the competencies to be prepared for the jobs of the future. We have to make sure that their road to the future is paved for a way for them to be successful.
I want to just ask you one more question about education, then I want to talk about the next president and how that might affect your district. There's a plan out there that the Department of Education has put in place that schools individually would have to come up with a plan to lower class size. And I think there was a report very recently that said it's been successful in a couple of schools because all of a sudden, classes that may have been 28 or 30 or whatever it was, now are 25 because they figured it out. You like this idea? It looks like you hadn't heard about it. It sounds theoretical to me, like a very healthy thing because it empowers individual schools to run their operation rather than wait for somebody else.
So education policy is not my background.
Okay.
I'll leave that to Chairman Benedetto, but this is what I will say. When I gave out the grants for the STEM, I went to each school and met the principals of these schools in my district. They are some tremendous, dedicated professionals. I think it is time that the BOE, and I think the new superintendent, Melissa Ramos, I think she's going to do an excellent job. I think we need to give her some room and let her work. I think we need to give these principals a little bit more bandwidth, a little bit more space.
That's what this is about.
And let them run their schools. Because they, Principal Flores and Principal Rivera from PS22, they do tremendous work, and I want to see them succeed. We need to give them the tools to succeed.
And this may be a tool, so to speak, that they can. All right, let's talk about the last election. One of your colleagues was here a few weeks ago, said that Democrats missed the message, and that's why Donald Trump got elected, especially with black and brown people, that they basically Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party missed the message that would have gotten them to vote, their way. Number one, what's your thought on that? And then let's talk about what you think might be in store for your district.
So one thing, if you look around the world, almost every incumbent of a non-authoritarian country lost. Justin Trudeau from Canada is stepping down, right? France, England. So I think in general, there's this angst amongst people who are like, we need to see something different. We need to see some action. I think the lazy take is, Democrats went too progressive or left, and not, did we do enough to change their lives in a positive way? And I think what they were hearing from Trump was kitchen table economics, getting back to the basics, and I think that's what we need to get back to.
And Democrats missed that message.
Yes. I think we need to get, the economy, people were getting jobs, but those jobs didn't matter because they were getting squeezed by inflation. Now, the reality is, and Trump is already changing his tune, inflation has been coming down, and Biden did his job on that, but we didn't mess it.
I was going to say, I've said this on the air a number of times. Right before the election, inflation was down. The gas prices at this point, I think they were up to over $4, and now you can get gas for $2.90.
$2.87 in my district.
And there you go. And yet that wasn't emphasized. Do you hear from, in particular, immigrants who are concerned about their status in your district? Is that going to be a big thing?
So, as you earlier said, I pretty much had 3 elections in the year. So I probably knocked the most doors, right, than a lot of candidates. And in my district, I have a very diverse Latino, African American, and West African district. And I was actually shocked to hear how many, not just Latino, but in general, the migrant issue was one of their top concerns.
It was huge.
It was huge. And that threw me off since it had such a large immigrant population. And it seemed that it wasn't about migrants coming in. They felt that they were getting skipped, right? They're struggling with their bills. They're struggling to pay rent, pay their utility bills, pay for food. And they were seeing someone who's just coming in, getting debit cards and money. And that's where their anger was towards, right? They're trying to do everything right. It's like the people who are getting on a bus, they pay their Metro card,
and they start to resent others. What's the answer? What happens up in Albany? Can the state codify some of the protections at this point? I know there's been dialogue about it, and are you concerned?
I am concerned because we can't allow divisiveness to divide us, right? We have so many real issues that we need to tackle. We need to create more jobs. We need to put more money in people's pockets. We need to create cleaner and safer streets, right? And if we do that, I think that would turn the tide, as we would say. With that said, the migrants are here, right? And some might say might be mass deportation, but they might not also realize that might be mean deportation of their neighbor who they might have known for 15 years, and they had no idea that person was not a citizen. And we got to be careful of that also.
Although, you know, they make a big speech, but now they say we're going to take people who've been convicted of crimes. I think the general public would accept that a little bit more than, of course, anybody who just came from another country would get you out of here. That's a whole other thing. Listen, we only got about a minute. Next session, you just started the next session. A priority, what do you think about the budget? We're going to get it on time. You have a priority in the budget that you want to take? Whatever you got, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm fortunate enough, I just got added to the Energy Committee. We need to lower the cost of our utilities for our community. Con Edison, the price of energy, we need to come up with a way to help, especially those on fixed income, to help them bring down costs. Second, we need to make sure that we are funding our schools. Third, I am going to put a heavy focus on our small businesses to relieve them of the red tape, allow them to hire locally, allow them to expand. We need to make sure our small and medium-sized businesses are growing, especially in the Bronx. If we do that, that's safer and cleaner streets, that's affordable housing means nothing if people don't have jobs, and most importantly, that gives people options that they want in their community.
I just realized the question I'm going to ask every elected official that comes in here from now on for the rest of the year. What's your favorite restaurant in your district?
Oh, that is a great question.
Did I stump you?
No, so unfortunately, we need more restaurants directly in my district. I will say Draft House, but it's technically in Amanda Septimo's district.
Oh, okay.
And so Suyo.
We'll give her a shout out.
We'll give him a quick shout out. Suyo is technically in Amanda's, but it's right on the border. But if I want a good drink, I go to Credit Life on Edward L. Grant just to get some wings and a drink.
Assembly Member Landon Dais, thank you so much. We'll see you around town and we'll bring you back.
Thank you for having me.
We want to thank everybody. Our producer is Rebecca Hemick, director is Will Guzman, Urelis Encarnacion is on graphics, Kaya is on audio. Thank you for pitching in. Our editor, of course, is Yenelsida Diaz. We have a cast of thousands around us here in the studio. Thanks to Joe and Marty. And if the curtain don't fall and the creek don't rise, I'll be back next week. Good night.